Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Lesser Known But Awesome Heroes. And today, as you can tell by this vintage DC cover, I will be talking about Patrick O'Brien, also known as Plastic Man. And I got a lot of stuff to cover here, guys. Now, he's also went under the alias of Edward O'Brien as well, although this is more of a noted alias. And what makes Plastic Man unique, before I actually get started, is the fact that Plaz actually started out as a criminal. He's one of the few, if not the only DC character to actually start out as a criminal and then reform and become a good guy. But I'll get into that. His first appearance was in Police Comics #1 in August of 1941. And he was originally part of Quality Comics from 1941 to 1956, which was then acquired by DC Comics. And he was created fully by Jack Cole. He's been an FBI-sanctioned superhero. He's been part of the Justice League. He's been part of the All-Star Squadron, the Freedom Fighters, and an obscure group called the Elastic Four. He also has a sidekick named Woozy Winks. And Plastic Man's abilities is that he can stretch and shape his highly elastic body into any shape he can imagine, even ones with moving parts. He also is immune to telepathic or psychic, abilities. And, there's been possible hints that he may have a slight bit of immortality. Now, we're going to go into the pre-crisis Jack Cole version. Plastic Man was a crook named Patrick Eel O'Brien. Orphaned at the age of 10 and forced to live on the streets, he fell into a life of crime, and as an adult, he became part of a burglary ring, where he actually specialized as a safecracker. During a late-night heist at the Crawford Chemical Works, he and his 3 fellow gang members were surprised by a night watchman. During the gang's escape, O'Brien was shot in the shoulder, but at the same time was also doused with a large drum of an unidentified chemical. Later escaping to the streets only to discover that the group had actually driven off without him and left him to be the fall guy. Fleeing on foot and suffering increased, disorientation and even a little bit of hallucination from not only, the loss of blood from the gunshot wound, but also the exposure of the chemical, O'Brien eventually passed out on the foothills of a mountain right near the city. And he was actually discovered by a monk at a local monastery on the hill who was going for a late-night stroll and took O'Brien into the infirmary and patched him up. Well, in a sense, patched him up, but I say infirmary very loosely. Anyway, he woke up in a bed in the monastery, and when the police came to look for O'Brien, the monk had turned them away, and he did this on the basis that he sensed a great good in O'Brien, or at least a great capacity for good. I should elaborate. And it was this act of kindness that not only pushed O'Brien even more, because after a couple of years of running with this gang and always constantly having to fend for himself on the streets and having to lie, cheat, and steal, after a while O'Brien wanted to just settle down and reform and walk the straight and narrow and live a normal life. And this event pushed O'Brien simply to do that. While at the same time, he also actually discovered that, his body had very rubber or plasticky qualities. He realized that he could shape himself into anything that he possibly wanted. And wanting to seek vengeance upon his former gang members, Take two. Trying to think of how to elaborate all this. Okay. He found out that the chemical entered his bloodstream. It caused, radical changes. It caused him to figure out that he had the properties of rubber, allowing him to stretch, bounce, and mold himself. So, deciding to use his abilities for the side of law and order, O'Brien decided that he would don a red, black, and yellow, although later on in continuity it's now just red and yellow, costume, and became Plastic Man. He concealed his identity by wearing the signature white goggles that we all know him for, and he remolded his face. However, O'Brien maintained both the connections and career of the criminal underworld with his eel persona. And this worked out very effectively for O'Brien, as he would keep tabs on the criminal underworld and stop any and foil any robberies that came into place. Eventually, he would actually start to work with the local police force, and would even eventually be recruited into the FBI, and would further and further start to discontinue his eel persona. However, Woozy Winks during this time would come along and be his sidekick. Originally, Woozy was mystically enchanted so that nature itself would protect him from harm. However, this would eventually be forgotten, and he would just simply be a dumb but loyal friend. In his original Golden Age incarnation, oh wait, I already said that he became part of the police force and then the FBI. He was actually the star of a 1966 to 1968 Silver Age run that was written by Arnold Drake, and that actually the original Plastic Man had a son who was a toddler who accidentally drank a souvenir bottle of the same acid that gave O'Brien his powers. Other Silver and Bronze Age versions appear to carry the same identity and origin as the Golden Age original. The Silver Age Plastic Man, who took up the mantle from his father, was later identified as residing on Earth-12, home of the Inferior Five. A subsequent version appeared in Batman, Brave and the Bold, and Justice League of America, which was identified as residing on Earth-1. Afterwards, the original Quality Comics version was specified as being a member of the All-Star Squadron and the Freedom Fighters, originally of Earth-2 and later moved to Earth-X. This version died during the extended period of World War II while on the latter world. Now we move on to the post-crisis Phil Foglow version. After the 1985 Crisis on Infinite Earths event, a 4-issue miniseries of Plastic Man written by Phil Foglow introduced a new version of Plastic Man. Eel O'Brien, abandoned by his criminal gang after being shot and exposed to a chemical, wandered the streets as his new powers developed, frightening others and bringing the police and National Guard on him as a dangerous monster. O'Brien was first oblivious to these changes to his body, but soon realized that he was the monster everybody was going on about. He used his new abilities to escape pursuers, but would soon become so despondent over his new condition that he attempted suicide by jumping off a bridge. Fortunately, he was interrupted by Woozy Winks, a former mental patient who was kicked out of the institution due to lack of funding, or as Woozy put it, something called Rigonomics, who desired nothing more than to return to the warm safety of a straitjacket and a padded room. Eel and Woozy decided to work together and capitalize on Eel's new powers to make their foundations. Make their fortunes. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm talking way too fast here. But, okay, O'Brien wanted to get rich quick, and Woozy just wanted his old room back, but couldn't decide whether there was more money in crime or crime fighting, and resorted flipping a coin to serve as choosing to obey the law. Though Woozy had his doubts early on, O'Brien ended up with the name Plastic Man after a reporter misinterpreted his first choice, Elastic Man. And Woozy set up a detective agency in New York City and they had various misadventures. The alteration that Plaz was initially in the superhero business for the money has been in effect on the character's development post-crisis, notably in the 2000-2001 JLA storyline Divided We Fall by Mark Waid, where he, along with other Justice League members, were separated into two people, his normal civilian identity and his superhero persona, by the manipulative, wish-granting id. While Plastic Man devolved from a person with a sense of humor into a constantly wisecracking and almost ineffectual idiot, the now normal Eel O'Brien struggled with his criminal tendencies that he had suppressed and became comfortable with in his role as a superhero, and wondered if he had actually changed for the better, or if it was all part of the superhero act. Ultimately, O'Brien was the driving force behind the other transformed Leaguers banding together and to rejoin their superheroic selves. Knowing that Bruce Wayne in particular was approaching a mental breakdown as he struggled with his rage over his parents' murder, while lacking the ability to do anything about it, as Batman was the identity that had inherited his skills. Another memorable milestone in the life of Plastic Man was that in the late 90s, early millennium incarnation of the Justice League in the storyline The Obsidian Age, where many of the key members, including Plastic Man, were teleported in time thousands of years earlier to the beginning days of Atlantis. And during a battle with the antagonists, O'Brien was frozen and then shattered into hundreds of thousands of inanimate little pieces. Having no way to locate all the pieces, much less fix him with the technology of the day, the JLA returned home to their own time and were eventually successful in finding all the pieces and returning Plas to his former complete self after lying near dormant and unable to move for thousands of years. Unfortunately, even though he had been practically destroyed and turned into shattered confetti of sorts, he was partial, if not completely, aware of the passage of time and his inherent helplessness, which had a profound negative effect on his mind. Shortly after being reincorporated, he admitted that he lost his nerve and quit the JLA, hoping to live a regular life. Helping him come to grips with leaving his former life behind was the new introduced information that he had a son, now a teenager, and felt the boy needed a father figure, and so he returned to a normal life. Eventually, Batman would convince Plas to return to his life as a superhero again. And we go to 1 year later, Countdown, and Blackest Night. In the 2006 1 year later DC Comics crossover storyline that followed the Infinite Crisis storyline, a young man with similar appearance and powers as Plastic Man appears briefly in the superhero series Teen Titans Volume 3, issue number 34, written by R.J. Carter. The character wears a white costume with red goggles, similar to that of Offspring. Plastic Man's son in the earlier 1999 DC miniseries The Kingdom by Mark Waid. While the Teen Titans storyline itself does not identify the character, page 2 of a published script supposed by writer Jeff Johns specifies it is Plastic Man's son, Offspring. Plastic Man's son is also shown in costume and identified as Offspring in the 2004 week 35, written by Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison, Greg Rucka, and Mark Waid, when he is injured while rescued by a number of depowered everyman heroes. Eventually, Plastic Man and Offspring come together as father and son. For a while, they had the idealistic family set up until Plas was convinced that he couldn't deny his rubberized destiny as a superhero. In Countdown to Mystery number 1 in 2007, written by Matthew Sturges, Sturges, Plastic Man is seduced by Eclipso, made to believe he is a joke among his fellow heroes, and the only way for him to get some respect is through Eclipso. He is later freed of this corruption by Bruce Gordon. Plastic Man makes his next appearance within the pages of Green Arrow Black Canary number 8 by Jude Winnick. Having been freed from a stasis tube by Green Arrow, his DNA is taken by Savannah and used to augment in anesthetic Connor Hawk in a bid to turn the young superhero into a brainwashed slave with a strong healing factor. Plastic Man appeared for a brief period in 2009 Justice League of America Volume 2 series written by Lynn Wayne. After joining up with the team following the events of Final Crisis, Plas has his effectiveness questioned by his teammate Dr. Light, which starts a fight between the two. Vixen breaks them up. Vixen reassigns Plastic Man to team up with Dr. Light to stop the Royal Flush Gang's robbery. When they have some control issues later after the Royal Flush Gang is defeated, Plastic Man and Dr. Light finally stop arguing. During a massive battle at the JLA satellite in the horrible JLA storyline Cry for Justice, Prometheus injected Plastic Man with a chemical that badly damaged his plastic body. The chemicals caused O'Brien to suffer from a condition where it took great concentration to keep himself in his usual semi-solid state and caused him pain. According to him, when he even thought about changing shape, leaving him in an infirm state. In the Blackest Night crossover, while still suffering from his deteriorating state, Plastic Man had his heart torn out by the Black Lantern vibe, seemingly killing him. However, due to his powers, he was able to survive such an attack, albeit badly wounded. In the following issue, Vixen stated that Plastic Man was being taken care of at Star Labs and that he would be unable to return to the League. He also then appeared in Justice League Generation Lost, helping a large coalition of heroes on an unsuccessful mission to trace Maxwell Lord. He has seemingly been cured of his condition and was shown retaining his normal shape without issue. Later, he aids the JLA on their mission into Hell, where he helps Batman defeat Goryon. I think that's how you pronounce it. The League learns Satanus' plan to use the Dante's mask to become all-powerful. Plastic Man grabs the mask, which possesses him. The League combine forces to remove the mask, which is incinerated, apparently killing Plastic Man. However, it is discovered Zuul teleported him into another dimension. Zuul helps the League escape Hell. And that's about it, guys. There's not really much else. Well, I'll go into more of, Plastic Man's powers. He has mandible physiology, density control. He elasticity, plasticity, whatever you want to call it, size alteration, size shifting, superhuman agility. He can change the color. He can change colors, but it takes a great amount of concentration. Invulnerability, regeneration, telepathic immunity. Like I said, partial immortality, it seems, and apparently ultrasonic detection. And basically, Plaz, his weaknesses, since he is kind of a rubberized character, extreme temperatures like cold or heat or any such thing like that, can take him out. But other than that, guys, that is actually it. That is all of Plaz's origins, actually. Yeah. So that's it, guys. That is the video on Plastic Man. That's all the information that I can really find or give you, or at least the brief summary, if you will. I kind of feel like Plaz gets the short end of the stick because I don't think a lot of people really get his character. He's not meant to be a serious character. Jack Cole created him back in the Golden Age to be like a fun, goofy, like crime, action, adventure, comedy kind of character. The cheesy character that makes a lot of witty lines. And I think a lot of people don't get that about Plastic Man, and I think that's why he's not the big success that he is. But nevertheless, I like Plastic Man, so do a lot of people, or at least the ones that actually get his character. So, while Eel O'Brien is not the most well-known hero, or at least is not the one that most people get, I will admit O'Brien does prove a great point, and that is when given is that not all people are bad and will stay bad. That if given a second chance and given a reason, that they can redeem themselves, that they can take advantage of a second chance and become better than their former life, if you will. And I strongly feel that O'Brien embodies that, because he was a guy who was orphaned at 10 years old. He was a guy who didn't really like the life that he led. He had to lie, cheat, and steal to survive, but he also just wanted to live a normal life. He wanted to do something good rather than just be a criminal all his life. And so I think I don't need to elaborate on it. I think everything that I've read pretty much explains O'Brien in a nutshell. And I'm not gonna lie, that in itself makes Plastic Man a truly not only awe-inspiring but extremely cool and awesome superhero. So that is it, at least for this DC character. So now we will move on to the Marvel character. But we'll see how far that actually goes. Take care, guys. At least for this DC superhero till I do the round robin thing again. So yeah, I can't think of any witty lines to really end this with, guys, but stay tuned, stay tuned, take care. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, all that. And also, look forward to any collaborations that I do in the future. By the way, even though it's kind of a little bit past, check out Senior Nerd's channel, because I actually did a collaboration with him not too long ago talking about The Dark Knight Returns Part 1. And not gonna give it away for you guys, but those of us within the YouTubers 3 have a special video that we're all gonna try to get together on. Right now we're trying to figure out dates and stuff, but I think it'll be a video that you guys will like. It'll be a good topical discussion. So stay tuned for that as well. If and when that comes around. So other than that, guys, yeah, I'm just gonna stop the video right here.